After nearly a decade of bloody fighting, the Soviet-Afghan war comes to an end with the withdrawal of Soviet troops in early 1989. The Soviet-supported communist government still controls most of the towns and some provinces. Much of the country is in the hands of Islamist mujahedeen fighters. They benefited from US, Pakistani, and Saudi support against the Soviets, but they're divided into numerous rival factions based on ethnicity and religious ideology. Now that the Soviets have left, the long Afghan civil war enters a new, even more chaotic phase. The Soviet army has gone, but Moscow still supports Communist President Najibullah and leaves some air power and ballistic missile crews in place. They also leave him missile launchers, tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, aircraft, and helicopters to equip the Afghan armed forces of 330,000 men. This includes the regular army, various paramilitary units, or tribal militias, like the Uzbek division under Abdul Rashid Dostum. Najibullah also tries to broaden his weak support by appealing to nationalism. He renames his People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan to Watan, the Fatherland Party. But the party's old factions still despise each other, and Najibullah's position depends on Soviet aid. On paper, the government army should be able to defeat the 200,000 mujahedeen, who have very few weapons heavier than RPGs or US-supplied Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. Even so, mujahedeen leaders are still confident that they can defeat Najibullah. The numerous factions, though, are divided between moderate and radical Islamists, Shia and Sunni, and rival ethnic groups. The Pashtun are the largest ethnicity, but there are also Tajiks, Uzbeks, Hazaras, Turkmen, and others. Revolutionary Islamist leader and majority ethnic Pashtun Gulbuddin Hekmatyar wants an Islamic Afghanistan under his leadership and without any other mujahedeen involved. He has the support of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, which hope that an Islamist Afghanistan will help spread their influence into Central Asia. Saudi Arabia also supports radical mujahedeen Abdul Rab Rasul Sayyaf, who has close ties with Arab volunteers training and fighting in Afghanistan like Osama bin Laden. Hekmatyar and Sayyaf's totalitarian ambitions are at odds even with other Islamist factions, like the one under Burhanuddin Rabbani. Rabbani is more moderate and, as a minority ethnic Tajik, is open to working with other Afghan ethnic groups. Rabbani's most prominent commander is Ahmad Shah Massoud, who has built up alliances across northern Afghanistan and is based near Kabul. Iran is worried about radical Sunni influence in neighboring Afghanistan and supports the Shia fighters of the Islamic Unity Party, or Wahdat. Meanwhile, in Washington, new US President George H.W. Bush's administration hopes for a quick mujahedeen victory and provides more funding for humanitarian aid and CIA operations. While the CIA starts to directly support commanders like Massoud, they continue to allow their partners in Pakistani intel, the ISI, to take the lead role on the ground in Afghanistan. Outgoing US Special Envoy to Afghanistan, Edmund McWilliams, though, criticizes US and Pakistani actions and growing frustration among mujahedeen and other Afghan stakeholders. Massoud echoes this in interviews with a British reporter.
During the whole of this year, we transported only a very small amount of arms, which were delayed from last year because of snow. But this year, we haven't received a single bullet or one weapon. The Americans always say things and promise that things will change. But we, who are in the thick of the revolution, haven't seen such changes yet. The Pakistani authorities say that the Afghans cannot manage their own affairs, that we are disorganized, that we are this and that. That's completely untrue. And that kind of talk isn't good for us. It's positively harmful. I'm absolutely convinced about one thing, and that's that Kabul, God willing, will definitely fall. But I can't say when.
So with Najibullah on the ropes and the mujahedeen and their foreign backers divided, the fighting erupts just a month after the Soviet withdrawal. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia create the Afghan Interim Government, or AIG, with the hope of legitimizing their protege Hekmatyar. In March 1989, the US and Pakistan approve an AIG offensive against the provincial capital of Jalalabad. Its capture would be a symbolic victory, but some mujahedeen commanders, like Abdul Haq, worry that it's a mistake. You want to know why it's dumb to attack Jalalabad? Because it's dumb to lose 10,000 lives. There's no way the mujahedeen can take the city now. It's surrounded by a river, mountains, and minefields. And if we do take it, what's going to happen? The Russians will bomb the shit out of us, that's what. No, we must take no cities. Take everything but. Up to 7,000 mujahedeen from several factions attack on March 6th, even using a few T-55 tanks. They capture a former Soviet base and the airfield, but Afghan government forces retake the airfield with the help of Soviet-crewed Scud missile barrages. Reporter Andrei Greshnov explains. The mujahedeen, who one would have thought were already inured to the use in their homeland of every kind of weapon, were psychologically unable to cope when these rockets were employed against them. Losses among the civilian population could be counted in the thousands, and the battle itself acquired such a massive and brutal character that it could be compared in military terms perhaps only with the battle for Stalingrad. After the initial setback, ISI officers present failed to create a unified command or to retake the initiative. The Mujahedeen supply lines are not built for a months-long battle of attrition, and in a static siege, they're easy targets for government artillery, airstrikes, and rocket attacks. 3 months later, Jalalabad is still in government hands. The attack on Jalalabad fails because of military mistakes, but also because of Mujahedeen divisions, which result in infighting and a push for reconciliation. Hekmatyar is a Pashtun, who are the largest ethnic group in Afghanistan, but are divided into tribes. He's a Ghilzai Pashtun and doesn't have the support of the influential Durrani Pashtun or other ethnic groups who do not want to risk their lives at Jalalabad for a tribal or ethnic rival. In fact, many Durrani Pashtun Mujahedeen hope to restore the exiled Afghan king, which puts them at odds with the ISI and Hekmatyar.
People of Afghanistan, they know they don't want king, As you heard in news, it's always, a conflict between the Mujahedeen. So I think if king remain outside, it will be much better. But if he comes, the bloodshed will be increased more.
In Kandahar, the ISI supports Ghilzai mullahs who denounce the Durrani. Hekmatyar also kills 30 of Massoud's Tajik commanders, and even attempts a coup against Najibullah, which fails after heavy fighting and opposition from Massoud's allies in the government and the KGB. The Pakistanis also argue amongst themselves. New Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto wants to abandon Hekmatyar, but the ISI blocks her. Bhutto also accuses bin Laden, who is based in Pakistan, of interfering in Pakistani politics and forces him to leave the country. The military and ISI then forced Bhutto from power in August 1990. New Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif supports Islamist militants and also wants to use them for other conflicts in Kashmir and Central Asia. New US Special Envoy Peter Thompson observes increased numbers of foreign fighters training at numerous camps in Pakistan and Afghanistan, including ISI-organized camps, which further increases tensions between Arab and Afghan Mujahedeen. After the Mujahedeen failure at Jalalabad in 1989 and increased infighting in 1990, Thompson pushes for Mujahedeen reconciliation. In October 1990, most Mujahedeen commanders come to an agreement on how to organize the country and the war effort, and form a traditional council or shura. But ISI continues to interfere and want to use the shura to legitimize the AIG. Thompson also pushes for so-called negative symmetry negotiations between the US and the USSR. The goal of the talks is for both powers to reduce their involvement in the Afghan conflict, but talks start slowly. The USSR still provides 2.2 billion rubles of military aid to Kabul in 1990, and President Bush is focused on the First Gulf War, in which 400 moderate Mujahedeen volunteers helped to free Kuwait from Iraqi forces. The US allows some captured Iraqi equipment, including tanks, to be sent to the Mujahedeen, but the ISI makes sure they go to Hekmatyar. Meanwhile, hardliners in Moscow block an agreement on negative symmetry in favor of continued support for Najibullah, despite the unsustainable economic cost. With a new Mujahedeen Shura uniting some but not all of the factions and US-Soviet talks at a standstill, the fighting continues in 1991. The Shura's plan is to fight the government locally in several provinces while the political leaders work out a plan for the future of Afghanistan. Only then would they attack Kabul. The first offensive will be launched at Røste, and from there the operations will expand. Najibullah doesn't consider Røste a priority though. Scuds and air power are ineffective in the rugged terrain, and the rebels take the town within 2 weeks. It's the first victory for the fragile Mujahedeen alliance, but it comes with heavy ISI involvement and is led by ISI protege Haqqani. The rest of the year brings more Mujahedeen victories and continued infighting as well. Massoud launches a major offensive in June and takes 8 towns in just 5 weeks. Meanwhile, Hekmatyar attacks and kills a Saudi-backed Mujahedeen commander on behalf of the ISI, and his faction kills multiple aid workers and rivals in Peshawar and in Afghan refugee camps. Meanwhile, the UN floats a new peace plan that promises to keep Afghan traditions in mind. It doesn't gain much traction though. Since the Mujahedeen are still divided, Pakistan opposes it, it's not clear if the Afghan interim government, the Shura, or an outside party should oversee it, and confusion over what Afghan traditions means in practice. As the Afghan rebels rack up victories and diplomacy stalls, the government loses its main supporter as the Soviet Union begins to collapse. A coup attempt against Gorbachev in August fails, partly thanks to the efforts of Russian President Boris Yeltsin, who opposes Soviet aid for Kabul. Doubts exist on both sides, though, as an Afghan official visiting Moscow in 1991 observes. We saw all these empty stores in Moscow and long queues for a loaf of bread, and we thought, what can the Russians give us? The negative symmetry talks with the US finally lead to an agreement, and Moscow agrees to stop arms deliveries in 1992. Despite this, the CIA wants to support one more ISI Hekmatyar offensive, but the other Mujahedeen factions object. The US pressures Pakistan to stop the attack, but the absence of Soviet support and imminent US withdrawal mean Pakistan and Saudi Arabia sense their chance. CIA-supported Mujahedeen commander Abdul Haq shares his anger with Thompson. Your withdrawal is leaving us while we're still weak at the mercy of the Pakistanis and other outsiders. You are not proving that you care about democracy here. Some people here in Afghanistan do want peace and security and democracy, but they're the ones you're abandoning. Your withdrawal is strengthening the radicals. Most of us already are cut off from resources, but Hekmatyar and Sayaf are getting more than ever from their Pakistani and Arab sources. These monsters are turning on the Afghan people, but they will turn on you too. If they come to power, the extremists will use terrorism and opium to damage the US. Meanwhile, in early 1992, Najibullah's regime collapses without Soviet backing. Tajik and Pashtun communists, who previously supported rival communist factions within the party, now defect to their respective ethnic Mujahedeen groups. Uzbek commander Dostum, who has the support of newly independent Uzbekistan, joins Massoud. Najibullah resigns in March and goes into hiding at the UN compound in Kabul. The Afghan government and army begin to dissolve as more and more defect, mostly to Massoud and Hekmatyar. The Mujahedeen also capture stores of Soviet equipment, including tanks, artillery, helicopters, and fighter jets now piloted by former Afghan government soldiers. Hekmatyar and the ISI plan a major offensive before a UN peace initiative can gain momentum. UN Special Envoy Benon Sevan appeals to all parties.
Almost there. Don't destroy the chance for peace. At the same time, I like to say to everyone, and I'm sure you will agree, and they will agree, that this is the time to promote tolerance and forgiveness. This is the time to refrain from revenge.
Massoud wants to prevent Hekmatyar from taking Kabul, so he first moves on Mazar-e-Sharif and then to the south. As the rival Mujahedeen forces race towards Kabul, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and associated Mujahedeen groups announced the Peshawar Accords in April. The Accords are an unwieldy compromise. They call for a transition government that will eventually transfer power to Rabbani as president. Mujahedeen commanders will become ministers, with Massoud at defense and Hekmatyar as prime minister. When the interim president enters Kabul, though, Hekmatyar fires rockets at his own capital. He and his Pakistani supporters actually want to run Afghanistan without sharing power. The new government blames Hekmatyar for the escalation and violence in Kabul.
See, Mr. Hekmatyar was our brother, and he was shared with us in this struggle 30 years. We were not expecting that he will do such an action against his people at the time that we are bringing peace and security in this country. But now I think that it's not easy for him also to move against this government. If do something, we forgive him and leave it to Almighty. He will decide.
Massoud's tanks and aircraft secure the Ministry of Defense building, but Saudi-supported Arab and Afghan fighters under Sayyaf also enter the town and begin killing minority Shia Hazaris. While a new government is nominally in place, multiple factions now also control different parts of the capital, including Iran-supported Wahdat and Dostum's Uzbeks. So by 1992, communist Afghanistan is no more. But the Mujahedeen factions and their foreign backers oppose each other. 1993, though, brings a new effort at unity despite the US loss of interest. Internationally, attention shifts to conflicts like Bosnia and Somalia, and US President Bill Clinton focuses on domestic issues. Thompson worries the US is wasting an opportunity. We are in danger of throwing away the assets we've built up in Afghanistan over the last 10 years, at great expense. Our stakes there are important, if limited, in today's geostrategic context. The danger is that we will lose interest and abandon our investment assets in Afghanistan, which straddles a region where we have precious few levers. In Afghanistan, the civil war has bogged down, with the country in ruins. A third of the population has fled, including most of the professional and educated class that would be essential to rebuild state institutions and bureaucracy.
Right now, 2-3 nurses, our children and our women, they didn't eat nothing. To whom should we talk? Where is the United Nations?
The Mujahedeen Commanders' Shura is still fragile, and some Mujahedeen don't support it. President Rabbani's government is weak and depends completely on Mujahedeen commanders. Nominal Prime Minister Hekmatyar and the ISI follow a, quote, fighting and negotiating strategy to wear down their opponents, who include fellow government ministers. Massoud, meanwhile, requests international aid to stabilize the government and pay the salaries of critical workers, the police, and the fledgling army. He also dreams of a neutral Afghanistan. We would like to see an Islamic government in Afghanistan, a moderate Islamic government, an Islamic government which the people want. It is to the benefit of Afghanistan and to the benefit of the area and neighboring countries. I repeat the point and emphasize, a moderate Islamic government. But a Central Asian Switzerland seems a long way off as events unfold. Ominously, Hekmatyar warns his fellow Sunni Pashtuns that Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Shia Afghans want to rule over them. In February 1993, government and Sayyaf forces attack Wahdat fighters in Kabul, hoping to capture their leader and push them out of the capital. Wahdat manages to hold them off, and its leader isn't captured. During the fighting, mostly Sayyaf's men abduct and execute several hundred Wahdat fighters and local Shia minority Hazaras in the Afshar massacre. Massoud is unable to stop the violence carried out by his ally in this operation. A Human Rights Watch report initially blames Massoud for the killings, but later reports and evidence hold Sayyaf responsible. Some observers view the massacre as an inflection point in the war, as up until Afshar, there hasn't been much ethnic cleansing or ethnic-based killing of civilians. That will change from now on.
The foreign countries have to help us because many people will die if this situation just remain for 2 or 3 days, for 2 months more. And it's really a catastrophic situation. We wish God that this situation would be removed as soon as possible.
By the end of 1993, there's no end in sight to the civil war, despite 4 years of fierce fighting since the Soviet withdrawal. The Afghan Communist government and the Soviet Union are gone. None of the mujahedeen commanders or their international supporters have enough credibility or military force to unite the country, and much of the traditional tribal leadership that helped regulate Afghan life has been destroyed. Abdullah Anas, who previously worked with bin Laden but now works with Massoud, sums up the frustration felt by many mujahedeen. I had worked for 10 years for this cause. I saw friends and family who died for this cause. And yet, what did it all mean? This wasn't an existential crisis, but the realization that life and reality wasn't just made up of slogans. We had showed the world the power of jihad and what it could do, and now it was all over. A vacuum was here. Now what? The answer to that question would begin to take shape in 1994 in southern Afghanistan, around Kandahar. There, a new group soon to be known internationally as the Taliban is about to dramatically change the course of the Afghan civil war. The international jihad against the Soviet Union proved to be a nucleus for several armed groups that rose up against their rulers after returning from Afghanistan. One such movement was the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, which aimed to overthrow notorious and eccentric Libyan ruler Muammar Gaddafi. If you want to learn more about the life of Gaddafi, check out Real Life Lore's new series Mad Kings, exploring the life of some of history's most eccentric rulers. And where can you watch Mad Kings? On Nebula, a streaming service we're building with other creators where you don't need to sift through a deluge of AI slop. Nebula is made and curated by humans, and it's available in 4K resolution on your browser, on your smartphone, smart TV, or streaming box like Apple TV or Roku. And that's not all. On Nebula, you can also watch all our regular videos ad-free and earlier than on YouTube. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can sign up for just $30 for an entire year. Right now, you can also get the Nebula Lifetime membership. Pay once and get access to everything Nebula has to offer for as long as you and Nebula exist. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can save $200 on the regular price. The Lifetime membership allows us to invest in more original content and improve the platform for everyone. 1/3 of your Lifetime membership will also support us at Realtime History directly. Again, that's nebula.tv/realtimehistory for a great deal that also supports this channel. To learn more about the Soviet-Afghan War, check out our previous videos on the topic. As usual, you can find all the sources for this video in the description below. And if you're watching this video on Nebula or Patreon, thank you so much for the support. We couldn't do it without you. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Realtime History, the only history channel that also thinks it's dumb to lose 10,000 lives.